So I'm a developer and creative technologist here at Valtech San Diego, and I also have a long sort of history in digital art. I've produced my own works, and went to art school, and I've worked with a lot of other artists in the past. So the NFT thing, as everyone knows, the weird world of NFTs has come up pretty quickly, and I think that there's some interesting things about it, but there's a lot to wade through. So I'm gonna sort of give like a pretty basic introduction to it, and then go into some more interesting features about NFTs, and sort of talk about where they're going, and maybe even try to create an NFT ourselves. So we'll just get into it. If you don't know what an NFT is, it's a digital token that represents a unique tangible or intangible asset. And an NFT can be anything digital, or it can also be a representation of a physical item. As you might have heard recently, NFTs have like blown up because of a fast-growing digital art marketplace. So a little bit more about what an NFT is. An NFT is part of the blockchain. So, blockchain as in Bitcoin, and NFTs particularly work on the most popularly on the Ethereum blockchain. NFTs are exchanged for cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, and so in this case, if you're buying an NFT, you don't buy it with any kind of currency like dollars. You're actually having to first get an Ethereum currency and then buy it from there. So that's a big important part of the NFT world. And then another thing to know about NFTs is that they are smart contracts. So the inventors of NFTs, they use the model of a vending machine to describe smart contracts. So basically, any person can come up to a vending machine. The vending machine doesn't have to know you. You're anonymous. You can interact with the vending machine. You don't know who owns the vending machine or the products in it, and you can have a transaction with the vending machine and get your item in a completely automated way. So that's pretty much how a smart contract works. And so when you're getting an NFT, basically, you can think that you're buying like a piece of media in that way as the vending machine. So just like a picture or a piece of artwork, usually a digital artwork is just a JPEG file, right? So an NFT is you're just getting really a verified version of a JPEG file. So think of the check mark on Twitter. It's just as a way of verifying that you are the owner of that particular instance of that digital art piece. So, and thanks, Matt, for this image reference. So a little bit more about the verification of NFTs. Basically, it's just a metadata file on top of an image. So most people say, why wouldn't I just screenshot the image instead? So it's basically the same model as having a deed to a house. The deed to a house, it's just a piece of paper, but the paper has meaning behind it, and there's also a whole law behind that gives it its value. So of course, with cryptocurrency, the world of crypto and NFT, the laws are not really there yet, but that's probably something that's going to be happening and already is happening pretty quickly. So another model to think about in that is publishing. It's an NFT can be thought of as like, you know, a publication in a way. So yeah, a lot of the smart contract things I'll talk about this a little bit more in a specific context later on. But yeah, that's the nice thing about smart contracts is you can really program them to do all sorts of these things. You can see the previous owners. You can make sure that it's the owner that you think that the original owner of the NFT is who you think it is. So these are also baked into the smart contract. So yeah, the history of NFTs, you kind of have to go back to the early days of MP3s and the early days of the internet with the introduction of Napster, like peer-to-peer file sharing. I don't know if any of you remember Napster. For me, it was one of my sort of earliest introductions into internet culture. But of course, Napster was, in the end, it didn't work out, and it was not a very good model for the artists themselves, because you know it was people were just sharing freely, and there was piracy issues, and it was not a very sustainable model, and ran into legal issues. So then after we had the development of Web 2.0, as they call it, and with this model, we saw the rise of platforms like, of course, Facebook and YouTube, Spotify, and Instagram. So as everyone is pretty much familiar with these are like aggregators, and you know, we have companies that serve as the mediary that, you know, handle all of this media. We sort of just give it to them, and we are able to use it. We become sort of members, and we're able to use it for free, or at least that's what they say. But of course, the saying goes as if it's free on the internet, that means that you're the product. So some issues, of course, that I think everyone is familiar with these days. Data issues, you know, when you give your data to all these companies, they sort of never come back, and you do not own your data. There's security issues, of course, when you give this data to companies, you're not sure if it's secure or not, and also for as far as the creators and artists, it has been pretty unsustainable model for them. I know a lot of artists who have tried to work in this model. I mean, probably a lot of you know musicians, and you know, it's a very small margin of artists who are able to actually make a living off of, you know, say Spotify, for example. If you're not moving like millions of streams on a daily basis, it's really ends up being a very small percentage of income from those revenue streams. So NFT is part of this sort of new economic model, I guess you could say, a technology model of the internet, and it's all built on the blockchain. So it's decentralized, and it's built on open protocols. So you have, you know, NFTs are one component. Some other components are, you know, we have cryptocurrencies, of course, decentralized autonomous organizations, which is sort of Web3's version of companies. We have DApps, or decentralized apps, and decentralized finance. All of these things have kind of burst onto the scene in the last, well, you probably only heard about them in the last like year or two. Most of them are only a few years old. Of course, Web3 has a lot of controversies around it as well. There's the big issue these days is the energy consumption, which has become a huge problem. This is true, especially with Bitcoin, which is proof of work. This is how the blockchain works to sort of validate the transactions on the blockchain. And Ethereum, which is where all the NFTs are, has recently come under fire for its energy consumption as well. And its energy consumption has been compounded by the huge boom recently in NFTs. So the idea, according to Ethereum developers, is that they're going to move to a much more sustainable proof of stake model for their blockchain, but they haven't developed it yet. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So energy consumption is one big concern. Also, of course, because these are open, decentralized, anyone can partake, anyone can fork a project and make their own. That means there's lots of scams. There are also bad actors. So although the blockchain is one of the features is privacy, and it's resistant to censorship. Of course, there's the question of, there's some people, there's some criminals who we really do not want to be out there, and so that's just another thing to consider in this new model of Web3. And of course, the legality of all this is still sort of under development, and we're not sure what's going to happen yet. So that kind of brings us to the present day of the state of NFTs. And really, NFTs now, they're pretty early. It's pretty early. And really, all they are, the way I characterize this this current phase of NFT development, is that they're really just market-driven collectibles. So there's been a huge boom in NFT marketplaces, and you can see some of the statistics here. So there's been 175,000 artworks sold. Most of these have been within the last few months, and the total amount of crypto art value is 500 billion. And most of that has been in the last few months. So there's a lot of talk about this being a bubble. And, I would not at all be surprised if that's how this plays out. That's sort of how crypto markets tend to go. These sort of hype cycles, they becomes a bubble and then it goes away for a while. And then they sort of come back in these cycles like Bitcoin does. So, and has everyone seen, these different sort of marketplaces out there that you can buy and sell NFTs? For example, the most popular one is OpenSea. This one is just open to everyone, and you can put your art up here, and then quite simply you can put a price on it, and people can bid on the artwork, and you can buy it. So there are even more use cases, which I think is really the much more interesting side of NFTs. And of course, there's the digital collectibles that everyone knows about. And another use case is event ticketing, which kind of makes sense. There's been a couple instances of that. Real estate ownership. Tokenized properties. This is something that has started to pop up, I think, in the US. There's even been some laws that's been legislated around it. Another interesting one is decentralized identification. And here, this is kind of like going back to, owning your own data, before it, where you sort of hand that over to companies like Facebook. The idea here is that, everything is your own sovereign, sort of owned data. And there's an example here I wanted to show you. So this also works in with smart contracts. They basically allow, zero knowledge proofs. You can have a transaction on both sides, and basically no one, your data, your personal data, never actually has to be exposed. So that's one strength of smart contracts. So, for example, in terms of decentralized identification, this company is doing some interesting things, building different tools for creating NFT-based identifiers, basically. And here's something. Oh, and here's just an example of pretty much all of the that crypto apps. The way that you plug into them. I have a wallet. So you have your crypto wallet here. This is just an extension to my Firefox app. And here is my public address. This is my sort of ID, my sort of unique cryptographic address. And you can see I have a little bit of Ethereum in here, and this connects. This basically plugs into your wallet and acts as a mode of identification. So this is kind of like a decentralized social media protocol. So the idea here is basically you're able to have your own profile here that's linked to your cryptographic address, and you can personalize it, and this way you can kind of add your own personal ID that is decentralized. There's also NFTs that are basically like you're able to have your own website, like a DNS for a website address, a decentralized website address, and that's linked to your crypto public address. Another really interesting one use case for NFTs is for ecological resource management. So there's lots of, since it's such a young field, there's lots of people doing really interesting research into this area, and one of them is the idea of managing resource management, like forests in this case. And the idea here is that the forest, the physical trees in the actual forest would be represented by NFTs, and there would be using NFTs as a way of monitoring how best to manage a forest. So they're using the sensing data from satellites to kind of try to track, where the forest is growing, where it should be cut, and I basically like plugging that into a decentralized economy. So it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. I don't really understand it fully, but it's interesting that these kind of use cases are being explored, and I think it's quite interesting. But going back to digital media, where we're seeing most of NFTs now. I think today, where everyone is streaming their media, you might say, why would you want to own digital media? But I think that some of the interesting things about the NFT and the Web3 model for as far as interacting with creators and artists. There's a few interesting features actually. One of them is kind of a new way of thinking about how we consume our media, music and movies and arts, digital, all of these things. Instead of thinking of them as like, end products that don't change, when you're able to directly interact directly with the artist, there's also an opportunity to have more programmability into the media. So in other words, like your artwork can be updated, in the same way that like your operating system has periodic updates. So if you imagine you buy an album and maybe it has some updates after a year or something like that. So I think that's that sort of like version control factor is a pretty interesting possibility with using NFTs. And another interesting feature that's been used, we've seen a little bit of already in this sort of decentralized creator economy. There has been the smart contracts allow for built-in, the smart contracts, you can really program in a lot of things into the NFT themselves. So you can program royalties. So royalties anytime the artwork or music or whatever it is sold and resold in the future, a percentage of those sales will automatically go back to the original creator. And the same thing goes for splits. Like if there's artists out there who are doing collaborations, so a certain percentage can go to this person, another percentage can go to the other person, and that sort of thing. And yeah, and then another one I'll talk about here in a minute is innovative funding models. There's lots of new and creative ways that people are trying to raise money and fund the creation of new projects. So basically, what you're doing there is, you're getting the opportunity to quite easily invest and support in artists that you like. So I'm gonna go over one potential idea for this as I see it working. So the idea here is as I mentioned before, they have DAOs, which are, it's basically like these decentralized, it's like a company, a decentralized autonomous organization. And the DAOs organizations, you can think of this, in this case, kind of like some kind of collective, like a record label, right? So you have a record label, which is the DAO, and there's different artists that are part of the record label, and they are producing albums. So in this case would be the NFTs. So the record label, or DAO, is producing NFTs, and people buy these, and that revenue stream goes back into the DAO. However, I forgot to mention the DAO, you can issue your own token on there. So in this way, you can encourage people to sort of invest into the DAO itself. So here you have two sources of revenue. You have you have investors. Say there's a record label that you think is doing really cool things. They're like, oh, all of the artists are great, and it's a new thing, and I think that they're gonna be really big. So I'm going to invest in them, and it works out great for the artists because they get the revenue stream. It works out for the investors because they get to grow along with the artists. So this is and then the other aspect about DAOs is that you get to you can also you can vote. The people who are the supporters can interact with the decision making of the organization, and in that way they become much more like co-owners of the organization. So there really is no distinction between the founders and the supporters. And you also, the money that comes from the NFTs, you can use that as a treasury to do interesting things. One example of that I'm going to show you. Actually, I'll jump over to, let me jump to this. So one example that's doing this exact sort of thing is, this is a project called Mirror, and it's a publishing protocol. So the idea here is they are publishing essays by different people, and you can to join Mirror, you have to pay a certain amount to get their tokens. So, and then once you own their tokens, I believe they're a DAO. So that means that owning a token gives you allows you to vote, and the voting goes into smart contracts, which allows you to decide things that the organization actually does. So I will show you an example of what they're doing. So again, like really easily, you just connect your wallet, and you can be interacting with this in a matter of minutes. So here they have this competition called Write Race, where they have people who artists or writers are submitting. They submit pieces or essays that they've written, and everyone who owns a token in this organization, they're allowed to vote on it. So whoever gets the top votes, they are the ones, like the top 10 are the ones who are published. So the top 10 essays that people vote for are published, and you can go and see these, and then these creators, they get paid. They get paid from the sort of treasury that is accumulated by all these tokens that people are buying. So let's see. Yeah, so this is an example. Someone wrote something. They're writing a crowdfunded novel, and you can read some sort of excerpt of that or something. So that's one example of like an innovative kind of funding model. And back to some more popular projects that we were talking about. Of course, the earliest project is the CryptoPunks that Matt mentioned at the beginning, and these were launched like all the way back in like summer of 2017. Back then, nobody knew about NFTs, and you could probably get them for like dirt cheap. But now, people are buying each individual one. And as you can see, the most expensive one is being sold for the equivalent of $7.5 million. So it's pretty staggering. you could buy pretty much any a really nice Picasso artwork, or you could buy this this NFT right here. So, I mean, we'll see which value ends up being higher in the long run. I would guess that the Picasso would be more valuable in, say, 100 years than these, but who knows? And then the next sort of instantiation back in 2017 was CryptoKitties. And this is kind of an NFT game where you collect and you personalize your crypto kitty here, and you can like breed them, I guess, and you can interact with other people. And this is kind of an interesting example because it's more of like more of a full-on like experience and an interactive game rather than just like trading cards or collectibles as some of the other ones are.
And what's fun about that one, Eric, is like if you have one of the unique ones that has like a unique something to it, I don't know, polka dots or whatever, then like other people will start to pay you to breed yours so that the offspring are unique in different ways. So it's like this interesting social network almost is forming where people are paying each other just so they can have the opportunity to breed their cat with them.
Yeah. So it's all sorts of really interesting forms of interaction are coming out of these. So it's all really experimental, really, which is cool. A lot of these things also are going for, this one is 5,000, so not as much as the CryptoPunks. A bit more basic, we have the NBA Top Shots, and I think just in like the last few months, it's had like $400 million in sales. And this is like basically like trading cards, like gifts as trading cards. I don't know a whole lot about this. Matt, if you wanted to add anything interesting about this, go ahead.
What I like about this one is that it's not the traditional crypto fanboys and fangirls that are into this one, right? This is like cryptocurrency and blockchain and NFTs going to, for lack of a better word, the mainstream market, so to speak. And so most of the people that are on this sharing these packs, this is their first exposure to cryptocurrency, their first exposure to NFT. So it's interesting how NFTs and blockchain technology is being introduced to the masses, and oftentimes it's going to be through things like this. So I like this Top Shot example because it's something people that traditionally aren't dealing with blockchain are now suddenly dealing with blockchain, and they don't even need to know that they are. And honestly, I don't think Top Shot even really mentions it much. Like, look at on this page, I don't see anything about blockchain or NFTs, right? They're selling moments, and it's a marketing thing. So it's cool.
Yeah, and you also get rewards, and so there's some interesting things there. And then in terms of like hype, one of the most hyped things in NFT is this guy Beeple, who has recently sold his pieces to Christie's for like $70 million. I mean, this guy's been doing his thing for a long time. I guess probably nobody cared for a long time. I think that his stuff is like not super interesting. I don't totally get it, but it's part of the whole hype. And I mean, it's fun. I like what he does, but I mean, he's someone who couldn't really probably make very much money from what he was doing as an artist before to now being a millionaire. Although it's not really indicative of the average artist.
I think that's one. So you mentioned earlier that this could or probably is a bubble, but like honestly, I'm okay if some starving artists get rich off of a bubble for once, as opposed to Wall Street getting rich off of a bubble. So it's an interesting situation that's happening.
Yeah,
maybe one or two words. He was a little bit known before. He has quite a lot of followers on Instagram, and he did do for the Super Bowl. He did do a spot, so he did have a bit of profile.
Okay.
One other interesting thing to acknowledge is that the two highest bidders on the Christie sale were also from the blockchain community. So they were not like normal art insiders who'd buy like a Picasso or something. So it's, for me, it smells a bit like a marketing thing, marketing push. But
I believe he's also generated the visuals for like some of Justin Bieber's concert tours and Lady Gaga. So yeah, he's definitely a production artist as well, like for music and things like that.
Yeah. So that's interesting. But there are a lot of artists who are, lower, not so famous, who have made significant amounts of money in this current hype cycle. So I think that's a great thing, because before, these guys really weren't making really anything. Especially the ones who are, less known, who are making visual artists, weren't really making anything. So that's kind of the most exciting thing for me, is that if this model in general offers a more sustainable route and economic model for artists and creators compared to what was around before, then I think in general it's a really positive thing. Some other new and exciting projects out there. There's Audius, which is trying to figure out how to do streaming NFTs. I don't know exactly how that works. I think it's also pretty young, but I think it is a product. You can already start using it. Another one is audio, and these are all audio NFTs. So here you don't only have to buy like GIFs and images. You can also here you can actually buy songs, and you can be the owner of it. So, I think that this whole concept is not totally there yet, because music is kind of a medium that's meant to be, put out there for lots of people. The way I think of it is like, maybe there's like a master record. Usually, a record label would own the master, and in that way, you could think of that as an NFT. But maybe some sort of like editions are a way of thinking about this. But it's quite interesting that you can do these different types of medias that works with NFT. Another one, and this is again going back to like the more interesting use case of NFTs, is like software-based things that really kind of like utilize the point of digital media, which is like, you can make things software-based, you can make them interactive, you can make them do all these cool things that you can't do on traditional media. So there's this Hic et Nunc, which is one of the lesser, more niche marketplaces out there. And this one actually supports interactive artworks. It's kind of a hack. It's interesting. It's all programmed on SVG graphics, actually. So it's contained within a graphic image. And this one, for example, it plugs into your wallet. So I had to plug into my wallet for this. It says, please sync. So you plug your wallet in, and it takes your unique wallet address, and it generates like a unique artwork based on that. So it's a unique one tied to your own crypto identity. There's another one. This is a cool interactive one by Golan Levine, and you can sort of doodle on here, and it just repeats. You can make all sorts of little doodles, and so it's like a cool little interactive artwork thing. And I think that this kind of thing is like where it's headed. There's certain restrictions. I don't know why you can't have like other types of software as an NFT. I know that one of the constraints is file size. What is it, like 1 gigabyte is the maximum for an NFT. There must be some other constraints as well, why we're not seeing like actual software as NFT, but I'm sure that is on the way. One other thing, which I think is cool, as a developer, This is not a NFT per se. This is just like a decentralized Git repository platform kind of, or protocol like GitHub, except for all of your code is not, GitHub is owned by Microsoft. So in a way, this is more decentralized, and you are more in control of your code. So these are all different parts that are sort of plug in together in this Web3 technology. So yeah, I just want to maybe go in a little bit quickly to some technical stuff, if we still have some time. So the Ethereum network, it has a couple different types of NFTs. The sort of more, the earlier implementation was ERC 721, and it was a bit more basic. It supported things like royalties. It had this kind of smart contract functionality, but you could only transfer one token at a time. They've developed a new one just in the last year that allows you to sort of do batch transfers. So this helps reduce costs and also energy consumption on the blockchain. And you can deploy different things under a smart contract. So in general, it's just a bit more flexible. So yeah, I mean, all of this stuff is developing quite rapidly, and we're able to see more and more features of what the Ethereum and other networks can do. So that brings me to alternative NFT blockchains. So I've been talking mostly about Ethereum, and that is the high energy consumption blockchain. There are alternatives like Tezos is one other popular one, which I believe all of these here are, the interactive ones are on the Tezos blockchain. And these are kind of being marketed as clean NFTs because they are not part of this massive network of Ethereum that is having difficulty scaling. So you get different sort of trade-offs on these other ones. Some of them are less decentralized, and they're a bit smaller. So the reason why, basically the reason why Ethereum is having all of this really high transaction fees right now and energy consumption, because they're having a hard time scaling up. It worked really well when it was just a niche thing and not very many people were doing it. But there's what they call, the Ethereum main developer has called the blockchain trilemma. And so there's three aspects of blockchain in terms of design that you need to have, but it's very difficult to have all three of them together. So there's security, there's decentralization, and scalability. So you can sort of get away by you can get away from the scalability issues, but you have to sacrifice the decentralization factor or the security factor. So these other alternative blockchains, they are scalable a bit more, but they are less decentralized. So just kind of one thing to think about. And as far as the transaction fees, you will find, to your dismay, if you buy an NFT on the Ethereum network, for example, if you buy on OpenSea or some of these other Ethereum-based marketplaces, that simply transferring an NFT will cost you anywhere from $20 to $100, basically, depending on how congested the network is at any given time. I think some of the marketplaces, you can actually buy them and they cover the fees or something. Not entirely sure of that. The alternatives like Tezos, the costs are really small. You don't even have to worry about it. And some of the platforms, as I mentioned, offer free